Welcome back to Questionable Calls. Today, we have a bit of a different episode for you. Today, we talk about pickleball.
It's finally here. It's finally time. We've teased this for like more than a year in our podcast, and it is time.
Yeah, we have put it off for a long time, but recent events have necessitated this episode, which we will get into and talk all about in great detail. But as is tradition, we must talk about our weekly tennis. So, Rishi, have you played this week?
I did another league match. I didn't practice. No, I also did a practice session with Naveen, our friend, but that was fine. That was kind of fun. One of the really fun things that we did was we're playing tug of war, but one person is playing weird the entire time. By weird, I mean you're not hitting like regular shots. You're just like cutting the ball, chopping the ball, slicing the ball, lobbing the ball, just doing all sorts of weird stuff. And we did it as a fun. It went really well. I think I learned a lot from that, and even Naveen learned a lot from that. And it's a fun exercise to do. Uh,
Nice.
Other than that, I played a practice set against Naveen, got wiped 6-1, I think. Um, yeah, I got wiped. Part of the thing is when the electricity starts at Seattle View Court, it makes a really loud buzzing noise. I cannot handle it. I realized I need like quiet when I'm on court.
Well, Seattle U is a naturally loud environment to begin with, like all the ambulances and police cars and people yelling and stuff.
But it's not that often. Like it's not that much. I was playing on court one and it's right next to the electricity thing, and it was so loud I didn't notice. And I asked Naveen after like a few games. He's like, "Oh, I didn't even notice until now that like the buzzing sound was there." I'm like, are you like so focused in, or are you just like completely out of it?
He's locked in.
But yeah, then I played league match. Beat my opponent 6-3, 6-3, or I think 6-3, 6-4. He was a lefty. Uh, both sets I was always like down 1-3 or love 2, but then I just like came back to win it always. Uh, it's funny because my serve went really well. I hit like 15 aces in the whole match. Uh, what's funny is in my first game I was serving, I hit 2 aces, 2 double faults because I didn't get to really practice my second serve. But good match.
Cool. I've been playing doubles against my better judgment. Played my first league match and it was doubles. We lost 7-5, 6-3, but it was pretty good. The team we were playing were guys from my co-ed team from last season. So, but they got better apparently. Like I don't know why they couldn't have played that level during co-ed, but it was pretty good. Going to be playing singles this upcoming Saturday. And then
Awesome.
today, right before this, I actually played doubles with some of our other friends down in Renton, which you must never go there, Simba. That's the dark place in the Puget Sound. Uh, but this park, well, we'll talk about the park, but there's a bunch of pickleballers there. And um, we were just playing doubles. We were the only tennis players there. And I remember in our second set, we were like right in the middle of the set, and some pickleballers were leaving, and our court was like right on the side, so everyone had to like walk on the side to exit all the court area. And then people were like watching us as they were walking, and I was about to serve, and the lady was like, "Can I try one serve? A pickleballer?" And I'm like, "No."
Foreshadowing.
Because like we're in the middle of a set, like you're not supposed to. Anyway, we talked about etiquette before, but just an odd request. Like I've never, not even from another tennis player, I have not been asked if someone can just step in and serve in the middle of our match.
That's a weird one.
Yeah, and then her husband was like, it's much different. They hit it much harder. So
It's not even the same mechanic, dude.
yeah,
The pickleball thing is like underhanded, like anyone could serve. Like when I play pickleball, my serve is apparently like so much better than like people go crazy because I could just hit a forehand.
Yeah, well, that quickly wraps up our weekly tennis section, but we said we're going to talk about pickleball, and there are some recent events that are very relevant here, very time sensitive. And before we get into it, I want to say that this is a pretty complicated and nuanced topic. We are not necessarily experts. We're just sharing from our experience and what we know and our opinions. The name of the podcast is Questionable Calls, so you may not agree with everything we say, but this is just our take on what's going on. And we also won't be covering every little detail. So, what is happening right now? Seattle Parks and Recreation has come out with a proposal called the Racket Sports Strategy, published on April 6th this year. It's a proposal, so it's just still a draft form. And the main takeaway from this doc, which is available for viewing on their website, they're proposing to eliminate dual line courts and designate more tennis and pickleball hubs. Let's do a quick rundown of what those terms mean. Dual line means tennis courts that obviously have tennis lines, but on top of that, pickleball lines have also been added, whether it be one on each side of the net, sometimes four. So there's just a bunch of lines on the court, and it's intended for players of both sports, usually first come, first serve or reserved. So a lot of courts around the Seattle area have been dual lined. Not all of them, though. A lot of them are still tennis only in principle. And then hubs means a location in which only one sport can be played due to usage, historical usage. So we've been talking about Lower Woodland Park a lot. That is a tennis hub because there's 10 tennis courts there and it's a high activity spot for tennis. Whereas Green Lake Park, those former tennis courts, which there are three of them, that has been designated a pickleball hub because the pickleball community has really concentrated there and there's a lot of activity there. So it makes sense. But the city is proposing to designate that title to other locations too. There are a few community meetings coming up where you can both listen to what the public officials are saying as well as potentially provide feedback. I think for the first one, I'm not sure if there's like dedicated time to speak up, but for the other three, there definitely are. The first one is simply the Board of Parks and Recreation Commissioners meeting, which happens, I believe, every month. It just so happens that this month is going to be about this proposal. So it's going to be virtual and in person. So even if you can't make it in person, you can watch online. If you're going to be there in person, I think that's going to be more meaningful. And the pickleballers are definitely going to be there in person, all of these meetings. But this one is located at 100 Dexter Avenue North, which is Denny Park. There are three other meetings coming up by region. So North Seattle is going to be on May 4th at the Bitter Lake Community Center at 6:30 p.m. I guess like Central is going to be at Garfield High School, 7 p.m. on May 7th.
This is the
Then,
one that I'll be attending.
yeah, I'll try to make it too. And then May 9th is the South Seattle one, 10:30 a.m. I think it's on a Saturday at Van Asselt. Asselt. So yeah, if you live close to one of these areas, please show up and make your voices heard because although we may not necessarily disagree with everything pickleballers are saying, it's important that it's not one-sided. Now, that's what's happening now and in the short term, but how did we get here? Let's establish some brief history. Pickleball was established on Bainbridge Island, right in our backyard, 1965. So actually quite a while ago, but it has not exploded in popularity until like the late 2010s, certainly COVID era and beyond.
COVID era for sure.
Yeah, but in the early days, Seattle had no pickleball courts. So because of that, pickleball enthusiasts took matters into their own hands and drew lines with chalk on tennis courts, even as recently as 2015, 11 years ago. Now, why did they choose tennis courts of all places to do this? Well, my theory is that it's by association, meaning there's a net, there's lines, and maybe most importantly, there are fences. So in order to play a racket sport that with a ball, unlike badminton, balls roll,
Hmm.
right? So you want to make sure that they stay within an enclosed area. And basketball courts tend to not always have fences. Soccer fields are out of the question, but a tennis court is
Baseball, again,
right.
same
Yeah,
stuff.
tennis courts are a solid, concrete type material. There's already some lines that establish some straight right angles. So, and I think people were like, it's similar enough. We'll just be here. Now, as pickleball surged in popularity from the late 2010s, picklers were increasingly occupying tennis courts. So the same behavior was continuing to happen. The city eventually came up with a band-aid solution, in my opinion, of dual striping, which we already explained. So this created 83 pickleball courts, which again are actually just lines on tennis courts. That's all it is. As of today, there is only one proper public pickleball court in Seattle, and that is located at Laurelhurst, which is a little northeast of UW. There are some pickleball courts at Maple Leaf Park, but there's no fences, and I think that the dimensions are also not enough to properly play. Everything else is the dual striping. So either the city provides nets or the pickleball advocacy group also donates. I think the ones at Bitter
Mhm,
Lake were donated by the AARP. So
mhm.
I'm not sure what year this happened, but the city did send out a survey. Over 3,000 residents, 72% of tennis players were dissatisfied with court availability. But even more pickleball players at 83% were unhappy. So this left Seattle Parks to wrestle with whose concerns should take priority. Some common complaints about pickleball included noise from neighbors, environmental damage. There was the whole kerfuffle with Lincoln Park and the birds, also noise related, and reduced tennis court availability from tennis players.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add something, David, and this is sort of taking it exactly from the SPR proposal that they have. A big reason for them to end dual striping was, and they've noted this, large blocks of reservations, refusal to vacate courts for reservations, large groups of people encroaching into adjacent areas and disturbing that. And this is sort of the stuff that I've seen from, I don't like to like pickleball communities. I understand why to a certain degree because there's nothing there. There's a lot of people who want to play. There's nothing there. You take the example of Green Lake Courts or Miller Park. These are still technically tennis courts as the tennis court lining is there, but a tennis player literally cannot make a reservation. And if they made, even if they somehow made a reservation, no one would like get off the court. So it is sort of like an occupation when it should just be like official use.
Yeah, at Green Lake, there are still tennis nets, and I think that's only because one high school will use those courts for practice certain times of the year. If that was not the
Yes.
case, then the nets would probably be gone. Other than the high school, I think the purpose of the nets serve on any dual line courts is like the barrier for the balls not to roll past for the
Hmm.
pickleballers. So really, they're not even being used for their intended purpose. So you might as well convert them. But if you remember in 2023, there was a major pickleball tournament held in Seattle at Lower Woodland. And you might be asking, well, those are tennis courts. How is there a pickleball tournament held there? What happened was the sponsors of the tournament resurfaced the whole place. All 10 tennis courts became like, was it more than 20 pickleball courts? Maybe it was, maybe it was more, but at least 20. And the agreement was you can resurface them, you can have your event here, but you're going to have to pay for it to be reverted back
Put
to
back.
tennis with the fresh coat of paint and everything resurfacing for tennis.
Hmm.
And the local pickler community, because that gave them a taste of their idealized future. They're like, let's just keep it this way. Look how great it is. So many pickleball courts. So they organized protests. They weren't very big, but they protested the death of pickleball courts, meaning reverting back as per the agreement. The arrangement was always a temporary one. I mean, they know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I remember looking at in the Facebook, these posts, and the organization or like the crying rally was, hey, the city made these new pickleball courts and they're taking it away from us. And it just showed like either a lack of understanding or just deliberate twisting of facts, especially because Lower Woodland is the most used tennis court in Seattle. It is, especially in summertime, it's impossible to get a reservation.
Right.
They open 2 weeks in advance. You still can't get it. So I was really enraged by that. I wasn't in town, but I saw that post and it just riled me up because it was just patently false.
Yeah, that was when
The narrative.
you were stranded in the UK, right?
Is this like 2023, right?
Yeah,
Like
23.
mid year? It was the time I was stranded in UK. That's a story for another time. I think we've discussed this in a pod,
Yeah,
but
very
yeah,
eventful year that year.
that year, yeah.
So it is worth noting that those Lower Woodland courts prior to the tournament were already in bad need of resurfacing and repair. Well, I mean, there weren't any like big cracks or anything, but like it needed a resurfacing,
Yeah.
especially given the amount of use that it was seeing. But the city had done nothing up to that point. Now, the following year, 2024, the city proposes the hub strategy. We already defined what a hub is, but this concept really cemented the separation of tennis and pickleball by designing certain high usage spots as tennis only and pickleball only. So we talked about Lower Woodland, Green Lake. I believe those were the only two officially designated hubs, tennis and pickleball respectively. And note again that the pickleball hubs, in this case Green Lake, they are former tennis courts, not proper pickleball courts. So that is still a fact. Now, bringing us to today, 2026, the city has released this proposal, which includes plans to remove many existing pickleball lines, I'm going to say, not courts, and convert them back to tennis, while also designating more pickleball hubs and tennis hubs. Despite this attempt to alleviate demand, it would result in massive displacement in the short term, which could lead people to take matters into their own hands and go rogue.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about supply and demand, because what the city is proposing to do is reduce supply of pickleball facilities while not providing more. They'll say that they are because they're like, here's these new hubs, but as we are about to see, some of these locations are actually not great. Like they're kind of giving them the scraps.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Miller Park isn't really scrap, but it's already like a designated pickleball hub at this
Yeah,
point.
same with Bitter Lake, although the surface is not great. But yeah, do you want to go over some of these some notable locations that are mentioned
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
proposal?
Ravenna Park West is being converted into like a pickleball only spot. This is probably a really bad tennis court, but I think it's sort of like one of the main ones in U District.
Yeah, I think with this, the hub thing, they're not actually including resurfacing in that plan. They're just saying,
No, they're not.
they're just talking pure usage.
Yeah. I do like the strategy. I'm gonna go through more of them because at least it like resolves some like conflict of like if this is a tennis court, this is a tennis court. There's observatory courts, which is actually a set of two courts. So it's in a unique situation of one of those courts can be a pickleball court and one of them can be a tennis court.
Yeah, but they're also
I think it's
90 degrees or like perpendicular, which means one of them is the wrong orientation, east-west.
but why does that matter?
It matters for tennis, so I'm wondering which one they're making the pickleball court.
Even so, why does it matter so much for tennis, David?
It's because
The
if it's
sun.
east-west, yeah, the sun. So every tennis
Yeah,
court
yeah.
is north-south generally.
Yeah, yeah, no, that I get. Actually, for pickleball, it might not matter that much because I
Right, because they
feel
can't
like
lob that high.
that's part of it. The second thing is the tennis, you're overhead serving all the time.
Yep.
So when the sun's in your eyes, it's so bad. Versus pickleball, it's all like underarm serve. So
Well, watch them make the north-south court the pickleball one.
no, 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 no. I'll fight on that. That's a line too far. They've made some of the Cap Hill, which is sort of the spot for new people in Seattle. It is the party spot. So there's two parks that are closest nearby, Miller Park, Cal Anderson. Miller Park, when I first moved here in Seattle 5 years ago, it was a tennis court. It's completely been taken over by pickleball. And it's pickleball court now. Cal Anderson, again, same situation. Was a tennis court. I think it was still a tennis court as of a year ago, but it's now going to be designated pickleball spot. Given how many people live, it's a pretty condensed area. I think that's not too bad. Does Walt Hundley Playfield, David? You know more about it?
Yeah, I've actually never played there myself, but from what I've heard, it is a tennis court, and I think it's dual lined right now. But the pickleballers use it a lot. It's like very popular with West Seattle pickleballers. Same thing with Alki
Alki Playground.
Playground. Yes, I have played tennis there, but there are always pickleballers there. There are some cracks there, so it's not the best, but it's always been pretty pickleball heavy.
Yeah, one interesting one, Soundview Playfield, which is staying as a tennis court, and this is where one of our friends lives near it, and him and his wife play there all the time. So that one says a tennis court. So I'm
Yeah,
sure he's happy
um,
about it.
I have played pickleball there before actually, and I've seen people playing there too. Oops, did I just say that I played pickleball? Oops. Not very often,
You're not me.
but yeah, because we can only speak from like locations we're familiar with, places that we go to regularly. We're not really in a place to like comment on whether these locations were the right decision or not to designate, but maybe you can judge for yourself. Maybe you're more familiar with these locations, but pickleballers are not happy with this.
Yeah. I think the big thing is, right, from we can speak of where we play a lot, TLU, Lower Woodland, David, some of the stuff in West Seattle. I think it is important for people, and this is why we've mentioned the meetings first, who play tennis at any of these spots to go speak and represent themselves. Because if you don't do that, then who knows? Soundview, pickleball, Walt Hundley, pickleball, Alki, pickleball, and those people who play tennis there are cheated if they don't show up. So I think it's really important to do that.
Yes, even if you don't believe in like getting involved in civic matters, maybe you don't vote in elections, whatever, but this is very much it hits at the heart of something that, well, if you care about tennis, if you play a lot of tennis, this will affect you.
This will
So
directly affect you.
yeah, so like this is a good way to get involved in local matters. I don't really want to call it politics because we're not voting on anything, but
Yeah.
like
Just make your voice heard.
yeah, that's why we live in a democracy, right?
Yeah.
Now, speaking of which, despite all of that, the city has historically not been open to feedback from the community. Like they'll say they're doing something, they'll take feedback because they have to, but they won't implement any of it. And of course, I'll always point to the lack of funds as the roadblock to progress. Like, oh, there's not enough money, which
But
may
then
be
it's
true.
not enough money. Yeah.
More money, more
You
problems.
you've seen Parks and Rec,
Not a lot of
the
it.
TV show?
Only the part about the bacon and gravy or something. Like,
Uh,
I want all the bacon you
Ron
have.
Swanson.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, if any of our listeners you've seen Parks and Rec, yeah, city budgets and like Parks Department, it's tough to like justify a budget. But
Yeah, well, this proposal, it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion, but it falls far short of an actual solution, even if money was not a problem. So we talked about supply and demand, right? The city's reducing supply of pickleball locations while demand is still growing. There is no denying the growing popularity of pickleball. Like the numbers are there, but the city's reducing supply and then stopping rather than creating more supply. Um, and we don't have the exact numbers as far as usage goes. Like, I don't know if anyone does, or if the city does, they're not releasing them to us. But that would be good to know because hard data is more reliable than anecdotes. Because we can sit here all
yeah,
day and
data
talk about,
doesn't lie.
yeah, we'll be like, oh, we have to wait a while for tennis courts. And the pickleball players will say, we never see any tennis players. No one's playing tennis. But that's purely based on conjecture. So it's not as reliable. Having said all of that, in my opinion, the city's poorly planned policies have led to unnecessary conflict between tennis players and pickleball players. We have experienced this firsthand, a conflict about like who's using the courts and for how long and moving nets and stuff. Everyone would be much happier if they could play on their own dedicated spaces, separate and not equal. They're not the same sport. In case I have to explain this to you, you meaning everyone, there's different dimensions, different net heights, different rules. It's like badminton, or
Yeah, well, what else do you want? They're
yeah,
different, right?
yeah. Just because there's a net and paddle a racket-shaped objects does not mean they're the
Yeah.
same thing.
Yeah, exactly. You have like racquetball, padel. You have so many things, right? Why, why go with the tennis comparison?
Yeah, and I think pickleballers would 100% agree with us on this because the only reason they've been using the dual striped courts is that that's all they have. If they could have their own spaces, they would be so happy, and so would we.
Yeah. Oh, well, I thought of another one, volleyball. No rackets, but there is a net. I think the size might work better for pickleballers, right? The court
Yeah,
size.
there's lines, there's a ball. I think I mentioned this, but like in Hong Kong, they took badminton courts and lowered the nets to make them pickleball courts.
There's also like, by the way, all of this also leads to constant demonization of the other side,
Right.
right? You have like pickleball players complaining about tennis people and tennis players complaining about pickleball people. I don't think it's a fair comparison, but it's animosity that's unneeded.
Yeah, let me pull up some screenshots here. I'll just read some juicy ones. Here, screenshots. What are people saying? There's been a lot of discussion recently on the groups because I lurk in the pickleball groups to see what's going on. And there's actually some reasonable takes. Like one person says, so the drama stemmed from pickleball players taking over tennis courts. As a tennis player, so this person plays both, I can't even use my walkable neighborhood courts for tennis any longer with my family. Why can't the city build designated pickleball courts and not sacrifice tennis courts? The city leadership is causing the tension, which we just talked about. And then another person spoke up, and this person seems to be a like a respected voice in the pickleball community. He said, if pickleball had places to play that were good and separate from tennis, they would use them. Sorry your courts have been taken over. Pickleballers want to have a home that doesn't take away from tennis as well. So, we're kind of on the same page about this deep down. Having your own space to play separate from the other sport will reduce the conflict greatly.
I do think, David, the sentiments are correct. And of course, we all want like peaceful coexistence, but like it's also like easy for us to demonize cities, but like, building a court is not easy, right? You need budget, you need funding. You need like people to like design the court, you need to find the right spot. You need to like it's money and effort. So
Yeah,
I don't want to just go and say, well, yeah, if the city did this, if the city did that, then we wouldn't have a problem, which it's still true because pickleball has existed for some time now. It's blown up for some time now. And I think the one in the proposal in 2023 or 2024 accounted for, hey, we're also going to build stuff in the long term, which is something we haven't even seen any plans for. Still,
yeah. Megson Park has long been considered a suitable spot for pickleball. There's been a lot of roadblocks with that. But what the city says in the proposal regarding building net new courts, they said the addition of a new sport or use to a park takes considerable funding and time to consider, plan for, and implement. Therefore, the provision of new dedicated pickleball courts throughout the city will require time, funding, and reliance on private facilities to meet demand in the short and long term. So that's a very safe answer. Like, oh, we need to plan for it. There's money that needs to be set aside, which is probably true, but no one's happy about that
yeah.
naturally. And it's funny because they mention private facilities. There's some conspiracy theories going around. One of them being that these private indoor pickleball facilities are lobbying the city government to like really delay the public courts because then that way more people will sign up for memberships
Hmm.
at their facilities. I don't know how true that is, but sounds feasible. There's also a conspiracy theory going around that the USTA is like an anti-pickleball lobby and like meeting clandestinely with the Seattle Parks and Rec to like be anti-pickleball. But if you see it from that perspective, maybe it would seem like that. But the USTA is doing what it's designed to do by advocating for tennis.
It's the U.S. Tennis Association.
Yeah.
If the city is going on and like making tennis courts into pickleball courts or making dual lining, which causes disruption to like dual lining in a certain sense just means pickleball, and it makes it not fun for tennis people to play tennis because now you have like weird lines all over. So they're doing their job. It's and the conspiracy theories say something about, well, it's because they want money and money hungry, and they state that, oh, 90% of revenue for USTA comes from US Open, and it harms them in that, which is like, it's like the weirdest counter argument I've seen in my entire life. If
Yeah, it's
most of
the
their money is coming from US Open, why do they care about like, some like court stuff generating money for them? US Open is such a viable business, it's such a profit machine that it's awesome. It's the best business model ever.
right, and it's not like our reservation dollars go towards USTA. It goes towards the city. And
Exactly.
um, reserving indoor courts at AME, one person commented like, they can just reserve courts at AME for $5. Girl, it's like $42.
Yeah. There's just such a weird misrepresentation of fact, demonization, just like everything all over, which is just absurd and unneeded.
Yes. Well, let's zoom out a little bit and present some questions. Tennis courts in parks are public facilities. Oh, sorry, taxpayer funded public facilities. Now, are public facilities, by definition, open for any use the public desires? Oh, like my taxes paid for this. I can use it for however I want. Let's think about tennis courts, right? I am of the opinion that tennis courts, meaning the physical location, is a single use facility. Now, if you talk about things like baseball fields, soccer fields, a lot of times you see in parks, they're combined. Like it's a big enough place that sometimes you even have both sports happening at the same time, but they don't really interfere with each other too much. But they're meant to be used for both. That's always been the intention. Basketball courts, I think, are probably single use. Have not seen anyone do anything else there. Uh, Swimming pools, I guess, is multi-use. Like you can swim, you can play water polo, like water aerobics. What else is there? Playgrounds, they're for kids, right? So I think that even if a place is a public facility, there is still an intention for proper usage of it. There's still rules. For example, dog off-leash dogs are not welcome at any place. There are designated off-leash dog areas, and they're certainly not allowed on tennis courts. That is a rule. It's a law. So if someone says, "Oh, it's a public facility, I can do whatever I want," no, that doesn't extend to things like dogs.
All right, let me ask you this. This is a fun question. This is like a counter question, questionable call, whatever have you. Say you're in winter, February, and you're in Lower Woodland courts, and it's not completely full because it's cold outside. The courts are maybe a little wet. Do you think it's okay for a pickleballer to just use those empty courts while no
Now,
tennis player is coming up? Like, imagine if a tennis player comes up, they vacate. But like, while there's no one there, they use it.
this brings up the question of precedent. And I posted on our Instagram the sign that I saw at Madrona Playfield.
Hmm.
There was a sign that says tennis only, pickleball is not permitted. They call out pickleball, and they also say another sign, dogs are not allowed. So I posted it on Reddit to see what people would think, and so one person said pretty much exactly what you did, right? Like if they're empty and the pickleball courts are full, there's literally no harm in letting people use them for pickleball. As soon as someone is waiting for tennis, though, they gotta go. Last time I showed up for tennis, there were some folks dinking around playing pickle. I just said, "Hey guys, mind if we take the court for tennis?" They kindly obliged and moved back to waiting in line for the next pickle court. Those people that were mentioned in that example, they're good citizens, right? Like they're obeying the rules, but not everyone's going to be like that. That's where some of the conflict is coming from. Despite that, like even with that, even if that's the case, I think precedent is so important here because if that becomes normalized, then it's going to be widespread and you're going to see people pushing the limits to the point that tennis players are going to be pushed off of their own courts eventually. So like even if they're not being malicious, if an average person thinks it's okay to play pickleball on tennis courts, whether it signs up or not, that'll sink in the collective um, mindset, I guess. So it'll be normalized on a large scale, and then more courts are going to be dual lined or converted.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And that's what it, in a sense, sometimes I've seen people play pickleball. I used to live in South Lake Union, and the closest court was East Lake, a tennis court. I really liked it. And sometimes it would be empty early in the morning on a weekend. And not even, and not always. Like sometimes there would be just a window where I'm playing and someone like the court on the side is empty. And some pickleball players would come and play, and I normally don't have a problem with it because if a tennis player comes, hey, this is a tennis court. It's what it is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a slippery
But
slope.
I agree with you on the precedence of it. Then you'll just have people squat. Like not everyone's gonna get out. Actually, the only like very decent people who'll be like, I get it, I'll get out.
Yeah, you can't always trust in the decency of man, and also even if there's
Woman,
absolute humankind, uh, even if like they're not, like I said, not being malicious, it's kind of a subconscious thing. So that's why there are rules to be followed. I'm a big rule follower, if you didn't know, but most of the time.
and
Now,
you're a host of questionable calls podcast.
yes, one more question here: are the two sports really that incompatible, tennis and pickleball?
How
go
so?
through some of those differences.
Mhm.
So the culture is very different. The I feel like pickleball, like they have this whole open play concept, right? So rather than arranging with specific people, like one or three people to play, everyone just shows up and they just play with whoever's there. That already is a very fundamental difference between the two sports. Etiquette also, like we talked about etiquette before, but pickleballers will tend to walk behind tennis players while the point's going on. And I imagine that you can't really do that in pickleball either, but I don't know why they just seem so unaware when it comes to walking behind tennis players.
Yeah, that bit always surprised me. I played tennis in, sorry, pickleball in Green Lake, and I've seen people be a little considerate. So I kind of see this just as like, I find it really annoying because I've seen people in Green Lake be considerate because it is a pure pickleball zone, right? There are like some people there who are like experienced who actually call you out if you do something like that's not nice. I think it's just this like whatever random people who what's kind of coming to mind is those like high school kids who are just waiting for a court inside the tennis court,
Right.
right? People who are just absolutely casual. They don't really. No one has told them that hey, like this behavior is wrong, this behavior is right, and if you don't follow it, you can get out. That's what happened, right? In like Green Lake pickleball courts, there's so many people, and if you do something like that's very inconsiderate, like everyone's like,
Yeah,
it's like
society
societal.
dictates the morals, the right and wrong of a
Yeah.
community. There is an analogy that I thought of regarding usage, bike lanes. So out on the streets, which are also public facilities, you think about like highways, right? Highways don't have bike lanes because they're meant for cars only. However, let's take this further. City streets, some of them, I would say the vast majority of them actually, are shared by cars and bikes. Now, you're still learning how to drive, but you may run into this. If you're driving and there's a bicyclist in front of you in the lane, in the car lane, it
Yeah.
takes forever to like wait for the right time to go around them, even if the street is wide enough.
Yeah, because you have to give them 3 feet of distance throughout.
Good driving student.
Yeah. And the other thing is they quote unquote in a certain sense have right of way because they're smaller, harder to detect, and if they get into an accident, that's much more catastrophic.
Yeah, it's a safety issue. That's a
Safety
big
issue,
part of it.
exactly.
Now, some streets are wide enough and have are used enough by bicyclists to have a dedicated bike lane. Sometimes they're even separated by bollards, so that increases the safety even more. But in that case, both drivers and bicyclists are happy because there's no more intermingling in the same space and you can just kind of do your own thing. That's how I see tennis and pickleball being together, like dual lined versus separate, having their own courts. So there is a proper space and usage for each one. Now let's go into some misconceptions. And this part, I feel like these are all coming from the pickleball community. I'm sure we have misconceptions too. We're not pickleball experts, but this is again based on our own knowledge and what we have heard. So,
Mhm.
a very common misconception that I hear in the pickleball community is tennis courts are always empty. That is so untrue because
It's Pat
first,
Falls.
first of all, always, a term like always should never be used. But so it's not always. And even if they are sometimes empty, like non-peak hours, like 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, they're still serving their intended purpose because many sports facilities are empty at one time or another. That doesn't mean they're not properly used.
Yeah, I've seen this in so many pickleball vlogs. They show this view of like, hey, look at these all these tennis courts, and they're using lower woodland, and this is when courts are wet in like Monday at like midday, and I'm just like I'm baffled.
Right. It's a bit of a fallacy. There was this one, so the same thread about the precedent on Reddit, this person said, the counter argument is usually about underutilized court time, but that framing tends to ignore that tennis courts sitting empty at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday aren't actually underutilized. They are available for their intended users when those users want them. So let's say that a tennis player wanted to walk on to an empty tennis court. It's there for them. It's serving its purpose.
Well, I don't necessarily love that argument because this is the argument. This is a small bit of argument that the pickleball community has that I somewhat agree with. Is that these are public, I don't want to say public courts, but it's like these are courts intended for public use more so than tennis use, right? It's tennis use for the public. And if certain courts are underutilized, I'm not saying Woodland is underutilized. Woodland is very much so utilized. There needs to be a proper measurement of underutilized. There is a sort of shift in resource allocation, which can happen. And that's sort of what is to a degree happening with the Seattle racket sports, like outdoor racket sports strategy, which I agree with.
Yeah,
But the weird argument of using cherry picking certain data points and showing that as your argument, that's not fair.
right. Similarly to that, another misconception is there are many more pickleball players than tennis players. Now, this is true. However, only because the nature of pickleball, which puts many more people into a much smaller space. Usually it's doubles. If you're thinking about dual line courts, there could be 8 people to a court or even 16, as opposed to 4 max for tennis. So, of course, there's going to be more people playing in that space. Games are also much shorter, resulting in more turnover, hence the open play concept. So, even though, yeah, sure, numbers don't lie, it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Also, again, I hate in an un we're trying to be as fair as possible. Pickleball is not a sport like tennis is a sport.
Hmm.
There are a lot more ping pong players than tennis players, but and it's the same with pickleball. Anyone can just go play pickleball. Playing tennis is not easy. If When someone is playing tennis, they're playing tennis. When people are playing pickleball, they're not really playing a sport. It's more like a recreational activity.
Yes, like golf.
Uh,
Although golf is more of a sport.
Yeah, maybe convert some of these golf courses to pickleball courts, right? Like, come on. That's
If
that's so much space. That's so much area. You could have 100 pickleball courts
Yeah, if we're
in
talking
there.
usage, like per capita usage, golf courts are like, golf courses are the most inefficient.
Let's go after them. But exactly. Yeah, I think it's not that they're different. Like one's a sport, one's a sport, one's more of a schmo, just come play. Which is what I love about pickleball, but at the
Yeah.
same time, that's why it's not a fair comparison.
Similarly to that, another misconception is no one plays tennis anymore.
Only Sith deal in absolutes.
Big Star Wars fans here.
Yeah.
But again, patently false. No one is a gross generalization that you shouldn't be using. But I think people will say that or they'll think that because they just don't observe it. Like they're so in their bubble, they're not in the same places that tennis players are in. That's why they think that. And then the thing about pickleball courts being taken away, we've already been over that. But let me show you something that I saw today when I was playing. So this is in Renton, and they have the system for this dual use court. So this park has tennis courts. There are, I think, three of them, all dual lined. And then there are also, I think, like two or three pickleball courts adjacent to the tennis courts that are fenced off in a different section. So here you can see, so I was at Talbot Hill Reservoir Park, so the second section here. They have designated times and dates for tennis versus pickleball, different days of the week. Um, so, for example, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. In the summer, these courts are for tennis. After 2 p.m., you have 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. On those same days, they're for pickleball. And then it kind of alternates on other days. So it's a bit of a complicated system, but at least here it's very clear what the courts are for at any given time. Um, looks like there's
Yeah,
no
I like
reservations.
this.
It says during scheduled times, priority is given to the scheduled sport. When not in use, they're available on a first come, first served basis. So, like we said before, if they're not being used by anyone and someone arrives wanting to play either one, they could, but priority is given once someone else arrives wanting to play the sport that the time is
Is
for.
scheduled for.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is amazing. I think I really think Seattle Parks and Rec for some spaces can even take a page off of this. Not for all spaces. I have other gripes with dual use courts than some of the more occupation reasons, what have you. But I think if you're gonna do it, this is the best way to do it.
Yeah. And also, like, because of the sheer volume of pickleball players, that's why these courts are all dual line, but they're also their dedicated courts. So, like, there's kind of like um, enough to accommodate all of them. But whereas there's only like three tennis courts, which it makes sense. Now, moving on to our questionable call of the episode, very much relevant to both what we just talked about and current events. This is not a perfect analogy. Like I mentioned the bike lane thing earlier, I think that is more fitting, but it just made me think conceptually. This is like the Israeli-Palestine situation. What I mean by that, in broad terms,
Explain yourself.
I'm not taking any
Ex-
sides here. I'm not a Zionist. I am not. I am not anti-Semitic. I'm not Islamophobic. Please don't cancel me. But there are these archetypes, right? You have the indigenous, you have the occupiers, and now there's people like third parties proposing dual coexistence situations. Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's, some of the other things we discussed, demonization of the other side,
Right.
sometimes misrepresentation of facts, and yeah, I don't want to say anything about the specifics because that always leads in controversy, not the kind of controversy we like in questionable calls.
A
But
bit too questionable even for us.
it's just not about tennis. So yeah, I think that is like the reason I face palm. That's such a bigger problem of livelihood and everything, which is not so much. But yeah, like it comes with any disagreement with, of two groups of people in the world where they've both felt like they've been wrong, they've both been wrong, then just unfortunately, that's just what happens.
Yeah, it happens all the time in human history, right? Like talk about colonization and like who does this land actually belong to, right? Was it whoever was here first, or is there like more to it than that? It's really complicated, of course. But for us here in Seattle in 2026, we are presented with like, despite all the history we talked about and like um, what has gone on in the past, here's where we are now. So what are we going to do about it? We have some very tangible next steps that we can take.
Yeah, I think make your voices heard, whether you play pickleball, whether you play tennis. Make sure you tell the city exactly what you need and exactly what you want for your community, the area where you play tennis. There's a survey that will make sure to put it in our description that you should fill out. If you can attend the meeting, you should at least fill out the survey. And it asks you just very simple, basic questions on, hey, where do you play tennis? If you've read the racket sport strategy, could you tell us what are the topics that you're most concerned about? And like just rank the topics. And if you have any additional notes for us, let us know. I think that is great. I was a little surprised the survey is unauthenticated. So you could, as a person who works in security, I don't think that's the best idea, but at least it's something. Oh,
Yeah, there could be some voter fraud happening here, some
yeah, bad
survey
actors.
manipulation. Yeah,
Yeah, stop the steal.
yeah, it's not the steal.
But yeah, on a more serious note, I would just like to reiterate the dates of the community meetings if you have time to get to them. The big one is where it's more like a town hall, which is the Board of Parks and Rec Commissioners. It's 23rd April. David, do you have the time for that?
It starts at 6 p.m. and
It starts
it's
at 6 p.m.
unclear if there's time for public comment there, but yeah, it's going to be as of this recording, 3 days from now, this coming Thursday. So we're going to try to get the episode out this week, and then it'll be in a couple
Yeah.
days.
Then there's May the 4th, Be With You on Bitter Lake Community Center at 6:30 p.m. That's sort of North Seattle. Then on 7th of May, 7 p.m. at Garfield High School area, and 9th May at Van Asselt. Is that like South Seattle? Yeah. So please make sure to attend those if you can. They are after work hours, so just pop in after work. I think that
Yeah,
would mean a lot.
yeah, and like despite all we talked about, like it's kind of fun to take jabs at pickleball players, right? But at the end of the day,
I love
we
to do
are,
that.
yeah, we're all citizens of Seattle, right? And we all, this is part of pursuit of happiness, right? Recreational activities. So we're just trying to have fun here, even though it's in different forms. So there's no need to get like personal with people or like get angry even because there's no enemies here really. We're just all trying to coexist and so sorry, I hate that term. We're trying to just hang out and even though
We're
like
just trying to do our thing, man.
yeah, it's a bit of a tragedy of the commons, but um, it's hard for us to like do our things when we're being forced to be in the same place. So hopefully the cities find some kind of way to satisfy both parties, but they haven't really come up with that yet. So that's why it's so important for you to make your voice heard, tell them what you want to happen, and hopefully things will get done at some point.
Yeah. I think that's all we have for today in our episode. Thank you for listening in on this very, very special episode. This is a topic we're both very passionate about. Um, if you catch us in our meetings, please say hi. Catch us in the Seattle city meetings. We'll try to attend as much of it as we can. Please follow our pod on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on the listening platforms, and as always, stay questionable. Hold up, Instagram. Always follow our Instagram at questionable.pod.
Yes, we actually have some more special episodes coming for you, including some interviews. So that'll be released at a later time, but that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah. So, anyways, follow us and let us know.
All right. Till next time.